from Columbia in high definition. This is WIS News 10 Awareness.
Dubbed Columbia's guitar guru, a well-known and beloved musician has passed on, but he leaves a lasting legacy through family, friends, and former students. Thank you for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. Robert Newton III was an accomplished musician with a universal genre that most anyone could groove to. He played among legends like Percy Sledge, Brook Benton, the OJs, and Dizzy Gillespie. He was considered a master teacher, with many students going on to play with big-name artists like Prince and Chaka Khan. Newton passed away 3 weeks ago. He was 58 years old. Today, I'm joined by his family and friends and fellow artists to talk about his life and his legacy. Shaquise Newton is his daughter. James Beresford, Jamichael Peoples, and Dave Britt are all musicians who have studied under and played with Mr. Robert Newton. Thank you all so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, certainly a legend in his own right, but who was Robert Newton? Anyone can feel free to jump into that. I know it's kind of a big question there.
He was so many things to so many people. He was friend, big brother, teacher, mentor. He was just everything.
And describe his music style and his music sense.
It was fusion jazz. You know, he was a great teacher. He could teach anybody, whether they were a jazz musician, rock musician. He knew about so many different genres that anybody could go in there and take a lesson and learn something from the ground up. And he played with so many different musicians, but predominantly like a fusion jazz style.
Now, he played the guitar and taught the guitar, but any other instruments that he taught and knew how to play?
Well, he could teach. He had students that were piano players, trumpet players, violinists, singers. He didn't play the trumpet, as far as I know.
He did.
Yeah, he did, because they tell me that.
Well, I know he didn't play the violin, but he
Probably
could teach
not.
what the essence of musicianship was, and the essence of music. And he taught a lot about improvising. So
Okay. Well, let's transition
pretty broad.
a little bit to Shaquise. Let's talk about how it was growing up with this musician as a father.
Well, I don't think I had the typical upbringing that someone has. I know a friend of mine was talking about her life with her father who worked for SLED, and I said, no, I don't think my life was as strict as yours was. So there was always music in the house, there were always students in the house, there were always books, and I think that one of the things that you'll see about my father and the things that you'll hear is he was always very open and very accepting, and so that was a really warm environment to be in as a young person, to know that there was nothing that you could say to a jazz musician that would be particularly shocking, though he did shock me many times with the things that he said. And so it was a very warm and music-filled place.
Now, were you motivated or encouraged to pick up an instrument, the guitar, for example?
I was not. I was always around musicians, and music was a part of my life, and I played guitar for a while and put it down, and later I said, Dad, why didn't you help me play guitar? And he said, well, you just had this talent, and I didn't want to be one of those dads who forced you to play an instrument. So he didn't want to helicopter parent me, but I think that was probably a mistake. I wish that I had that instrument in my life right now.
So, looking back over his life, what would you say his legacy is?
I think that that's probably the toughest question that you could ask, but I would look at it in two parts. There's a musical legacy. If you look at how long he played in Columbia, how many bands he played with, how many locations, how many students he taught, if you're in Columbia listening to music, you might be influenced by him and not even know it. So there's certainly a musical legacy, but so many students and so many people have come to me and they've talked about how he was able to listen to them and understand them and connect with them. And so I think that connection person to person, helping them not just with music but with things that they can apply in their lives, is what's going to be the real legacy.
Right. Now, talking about life applications here, I would assume, I never met him, unfortunately, but the lessons he taught you, I'm sure it expanded far beyond just music, right?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. He had, he really was a voracious reader in his own way. He kind of was I don't know if philosopher is the right word, but
Yep.
there were a lot of lessons. You can ask anybody that took with him for a significant amount of time, that there were plenty of lessons where the guitar never even came out of the case.
Really?
True. Counselor.
He was a life coach, psychologist. You go in there and he's one of the best listeners I'd ever met in my life, and I still can say that to this day, that no one's ever listened to. You know, it takes a lot of energy to sit there and truly listen to somebody, and that guy, that was his #1 talent, I think, and it's still part of his legacy, I think, you know.
Now, what was it like playing with him?
Scary.
Very.
Why was it scary?
Because he was so good, you know, it was intimidating. He was definitely the best that there was in town, in my opinion. And still is one of the best that's ever been in Columbia, I think.
And Michael, what about for you?
Well, playing with Robert was scary because you knew he was going to hold you accountable to a very high standard. I remember the time, and I'm pretty sure all the students have had this experience. I went to go see Robert play. Robert calls me to the front in the middle of the jam session. He throws the guitar, well, first he tells me to adjust his amplifier. I didn't know at the time he was gonna put the guitar around my neck and then leave the club for
Wait,
an
what?
hour. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
So he just
all
leave
of
the
us had
stage.
that
He left the club altogether.
Yes. An hour later, I see Robert in the back of the club like, go my brother, keep playing. And at the time, I was new to this, but Robert had a way of like seeing your potential and making the demands, even though
Yeah.
it made you uncomfortable. And he just held you accountable to that. So that what made it. You never knew what to expect with Robert.
Right.
He was such a loving dude. You'd come into his lessons and he'd give you this big warm hug. But then he turns to commando, where he forces you to play.
Right.
He demands that you become great, and he holds you accountable to
He
that.
demands your best.
Yeah,
And clearly
absolutely.
that night it was sink or swim for you.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't going to bail you out.
Oh no, just keep playing, brother.
That's what he would have called baptism by fire.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah, he loved that
absolutely.
method.
Well, let's talk about his philosophies on practicing. What would he tell you about practice?
Oh man.
Stop eating, stop sleeping, just practice.
Put your all into it.
Yeah.
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 Well, let's listen to his words about practicing.
Practice. Practice hard. Practice a lot. Practice smart. Until next time, peace.
So practice hard, practice a lot, practice smart. Does that sound like something he would routinely say?
Yeah. Let me just tell you what Robert convinced me to do about my practice schedule. I told Robert I was working a full-time job. I was a new dad. And Robert told me to schedule my sleep. I remember sitting at yesterday's and 5 Points, and he looked at me. It was about 6 other people at the table. He knew I was zoned into what he had to say. I just listened to him intently when he talked. He said, schedule your sleep. I'm like, what do you mean, Robert? He says, go to sleep at 9, wake up at 12. Practice for an hour. Go to sleep, wake up at 3. Get up, practice for another hour. And I bought into it. And I sat at the table like, yes, sir, I will schedule my sleep. And I did that to the best of my ability for a while. But he always will hold you accountable to practice.
Yeah, because he wanted you to be your
And the results
best.
show because he's a great guitar player.
Yeah, as we will see coming up a little bit later on.
Well, all the students are great.
Well, now let's talk a little bit about what's happening this afternoon. You're honoring your father in a very special way.
We are, as one of the things that we haven't talked about was just his spirit of life and celebration, and he really always wanted to embrace things that are positive, and in his passing he wanted to do that as well. He always said, when I move on, what I really want is I want a celebration, I want a party, I want there to be music. And so tonight, or really this afternoon, what we're doing is we're having a celebration of his life, music, and spirit. We're inviting everyone to come out to the 5 Points Fountain for a free concert from 3 to 7 so they can see some of those great students, some of the people who knew him and loved him, and for people who didn't even know him, let's just celebrate and have a good time together.
Right, yeah, we have some information you see there on your screen. It's this afternoon from 3 to 7 at the 5 Points Fountain, and several local performers are going to be out there giving people a great concert, right?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, we've got a lot of, Herbie Jeffcoat I know is going to be there, and guys like Brian Connor. I know some people are coming back from out of town to just get together and perform and jam together a little bit, and it's going to be a great event in the way that he would have loved to see it.
Right. Well, I want to conclude this segment by asking each of you your favorite or your best memory. And I'm going to start with Shakis. I'm putting you right in the spot.
That would be right on the spot. My favorite or my best memory. I can't say that this is my favorite, but I know it's one of the the things that I always remember. I think Dave mentioned how well he listened. Every now and then we would get together and I would say, okay, during this conversation, I want to find out this one thing, only this one thing, but I must get the answer. And we would sit and we would talk and I would try and I would try. And after an hour, I would leave and I'd say, gosh, I still don't have the answer to my question, because everything that I said and everything that I asked, he managed to turn it back around to me.
Sure.
Because he was that focused on the other person and that focused on listening. So it's not a one-time memory, but it's a many-time memory for me.
Right. James?
Yeah, I don't know if I could pin that down to one either, but we used to practice together, and I was a student for a long time, and I remember at least one time in particular, well, it happened many times, but we would play together and practice improvising and just totally get lost in the music together. And then when we would finish it, we'd just kind of look at each other, then be silence, and it was a real knowingness, experiencing music as a universal language that way.
Right.
And I'm really fond of those memories.
And then real quickly, JaMichael, and then Dave.
Well, I was taking lessons from Rob, and there was a time where I couldn't afford to continue lessons. And I told Rob that, but he wanted me to keep coming.
Right.
At the time, I was a barber, and Rob said, well, hey, if you cut my hair, we can exchange for lessons. And he allowed me to do that, so I continued taking lessons. And when Robert got sick, I called his sister and I asked, could I come over to the house and cut his hair and talk guitar and eat waffles? And it was just, I just wanted to give back, because you know, I owe him my musical career, because he allowed me to keep studying with him even though I couldn't afford lessons.
Great. So. And lastly, Dave?
I don't know about a best moment. They were all good moments with Robert, but one of the coolest things that we ever experienced together, I was promoting at a club called Monterey Jacks back in '98, and he'd been playing there about 2 years, and we had a customer appreciation party, and we had so many people show up that they were spilled onto the streets. The police came, and I'm like, what do you want me to do about it? I can't make them go home. And they all just stood out there for 2 hours while the show took place. And there were so many people that all they could do was just kind of help keep them out of the street. And it was amazing to see the progression of his playing translate to all those people in Columbia.
What a great turnout. Well, thank you all so much for being here to remember Mr. Robert Newton.
Thank you.
Well, coming up after the break, Dear Robert Newton, a special song written and performed by his former students and bandmates. Stay with us. Welcome back to Awareness. Switching gears now, a church in Columbia is reaching out to the community to provide a helping hand. Starting in July, the church has been doing giveaways, and they're called Monthly Miracles. Carl Solomon joins us now. He's a local attorney and member of Grace Christian Church. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what is the purpose of these Monthly Miracles?
Well, at Grace Christian Church, our pastor always challenges us to go out and live what we believe. And one of the things he came up with is, if we really believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ and we want to do good things for other people, then we've got to start doing it in a way that not only provides some service, but also inspires other people to do it.
Right.
So we started with the Monthly Miracles. We started with gas because it was going to be 4th of July.
Right.
Lots of people needed gas, and we gave away 100 tanks full of gas, and it was incredible to see the response of the people, etc. In addition to that, we wanted to get other people engaged. So we've actually been challenging people. We want people to do what we've done and more. Can you go out? Can you give things to people? Because if we want Columbia to be great, if we want to really have a good community, we've got to all get engaged and involved.
Right, we all have to take part in this. Now, this is a mission for how long? How many months are you doing these miracles?
Well, it's to be determined. Right now, we're scheduled all the way to the end of the year. And what we've committed ourselves to doing is going out, raising the funds necessary, having the young ladies and the men that are necessary to come out. Lots of young people are getting engaged in this and are getting involved in community service. And we're going to do a miracle July, August, September, October, November, and December. And at that time, we're going to reevaluate. But we really think this is going to run a long time and anticipate some annual events to come out of it.
Right. So next month, August, we have book bags.
Yes, we're going to do on August 16th. It's going to be a little more of a school celebration.
Okay.
We're going to have people at my law firm, 3501 North Main Street, come out, and the first 200 children are going to get school supplies, which includes book bags, plus things in them that are age appropriate and grade appropriate for them. But that's not going to be it. We want people to be excited about going to school. We want to celebrate education. So we're going to have bounce houses. We're going to have people lead them in some physical education. And for those who like games and want to do things of that type, we're going to open the doors to the law firm. We're going to have Xboxes. We're going to have Wii's. We're going to take kids in and let them sit down and have a good time gaming as well.
They're not going to want to leave. You know that, right?
Well, we love the children, so they can stay as long as they want.
Great. And so let's go through the rest of the month. September, we have shoes. October, and so on and so forth?
Correct. In September, what we're going to do is we're going to get one third grade classroom, and we're going to challenge them to read. It's going to be a school, I'm sorry, and we're going to challenge all the third graders to read. And then we're going to pick the class based on who reads the most books, and then we're going to go in and we're going to give them tennis shoes. Sounds like a small thing, but a lot of time the kids of that age, that's a real big motivator.
It's true.
And we want to tie success to education and do it. In October, we're going to do some coats. Starting to get cold, we want to do things that are truly meaningful and relevant to people. In November, we're going to do turkeys and around Thanksgiving and make sure those that are less fortunate have the opportunity to receive a good meal. And then in December, we're going to do toys for families.
Now, if people want to donate or they want to take part in this monthly miracle giveaway, how do they get in touch with you all?
Well, they can get in touch with Grace Christian Church, and they're all over at GCC of SC on Twitter. The website is www.gccofsc.com. There's an app that you can download as well, many ways to contact, or they can contact my law firm, the Solomon Law Group.
Okay, and that is if they want to take part and receive some of these giveaways, or if they also want to help in the donation process?
Well, they can call for either reason, and what we will do is, one, let them know what things will be available and when. And we're not just about these monthly miracles. We have a set of resources throughout the city of people that help people, whether it be referring them to DSS or to shelters or whatever they need. So if they have a need that we can't meet, we'll try to refer them to someone who can.
Because it's not just about these material things. There's a greater good at work here.
Absolutely. This is about doing good for someone other than yourself, paying it forward, so that we can really see our community kind of go back to the old times when my parents and our grandparents would talk about how everyone looked out for everybody. And we think for Columbia to have a great quality of life, it not only needs great arts and great things to go see, but it has to have a great camaraderie, a love for people, and that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Right, it takes a village.
It does.
Well, thank you so much, Carl, for being with us, and we will put all of the contact information on our Facebook page. We'll be right back. We'd like to thank all of our guests this morning, including the musicians who you see pictured there on your screen. And remember, you can attend the musical memorial concert in Newton's honor today from 3 p.m. to 7 at the 5 Points Fountain. We leave you now with the sounds of Mr. Robert Newton. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.